And we're live. All
Woo!
right. Woo. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 4 of the V Square with your favorite co hosts, Vivek and Vidhika. I'm Vivek,
And I'm Vidhika.
and welcome again to episode 4. How are you doing, Vidhika?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for this special edition of the V Square where can I give it away?
Give it away. Just give it
Okay.
away.
I'm allowed this time. Okay.
We're so
Yes.
slutty with our topic. We're just giving away. There's no suspense at all.
Okay, wonderful. Um yeah, well basically today you're stuck with just us. There's not going to be a special guest. So this is the first time we're doing this, but you're going to get to hear us babble on for a little bit. So hopefully it'll be fun.
Oh, it's gonna be great. Yeah. Yeah, we were talking about our own conversational chemistry, the rhythm and everything. And we decided, we just wanted to explore that for a bit, after a few episodes of having guests on. And yeah, so this should be fun. So let's see. What I had on what's, just checking in. How have you
Yeah.
been?
I've been good. I feel like every time we do one of these, I start
Mm.
with like, I'm tired, I'm sleepy. Clearly I just need to start getting a little bit more sleep. That seems to be a theme. Um, but yeah, doing well. I actually attended a salon this morning about poetry, which was nice. I wrote. I think we had about 10 minutes to write a poem, and it was lovely. I
To
wrote
write
one.
a poem.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about poetry for a while, and then at one point, I was curious because I'm not new to reading poetry, but I'm new to. So when I was much younger, I used to write poetry when I was like 6 or 7 ish. But it's been a very long time, and I just haven't written poetry, and I've lost all. I guess as a 7-year-old, I had more confidence in it, and now I just feel like I don't even know what makes a good poem. Like I know it when I see it and when I read it, I can appreciate it, but anyway, so I was asking the group about, just like what has helped them get unstuck, what has helped them kind of go into it. And I was obviously thinking about our conversation earlier with Visa about just like write 100 bad poems. And so that's kind of where my head is at. But yeah, it was nice. So we had to write a poem, and I didn't realize we were going to share. And yeah, it was kind of liberating though. It was like scary, but it was kind of cool, just like this, to share something not that great. And once it was out in the world, it's like, oh, guess what? Nothing terrible happened. It's out in
Mhm.
the world. So yeah, that was fun. And
So you're saying you wrote a terrible poem this morning.
you know, it wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be. It
Mm.
wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible either. So I was like,
Mm.
okay, I wrote a mediocre poem. Like,
That
take it.
that's a great job because it's not easy for Vidhika to say it's not terrible. If you pass Vidhika's filter of not terrible, that's a big deal.
you know, now that you say that, it's like, yeah, I'm actually surprised those words came out of my mouth. But yes, you're right. I'm working on being kinder to myself.
Mm.
I'm working on being a lot more accepting of bad things. Like I'm trying to learn from, the things we talk about. I'm trying to practice what we preach here. So yeah, that's been fun. And I attended like a poetry slam earlier in the weekend, which I really enjoyed. So I'm really like loving the fact that I'm getting back into this kind of thing. Like I used to really be into um, attending and even just trying once in a while to write stuff, and it's been so long. So yeah, I'm
Mm.
really enjoying that.
Mm.
Um,
Mm. Mm.
and then
Again, so on brand. Like for last episode, we talked about not the stereotype, but an enlightened techie. No, I mean, you guys had a different person in mind, like a tech bro, but like
yeah.
this is like poetry slam. Exactly. Okay. Now I'm learning a lot about you doing the series.
Wait, are
Like
there
you're the kind of person who would go to a poetry slam. Wow, amazing.
I was just gonna say, is there some sort of like stigma around that? Because I am clueless. I just think they're fun, but is
Hmm.
what's the stigma? You seem to have something in mind, some sort of
No, the
stereotype.
primary stigma is me. Like people like me.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I'm kidding. I mean, I'm like, I think they're silly, or they can be hilarious. Like some
oh,
poetry slams take themselves very, very seriously,
mm,
and very self-righteously. Like, and there's a
mm.
lot of screaming, and there's a lot of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
crying, and like it's great. It's great.
Mhm.
I'm all for
You
good
clearly don't
emotional
think it's
expression.
great, but that's okay. You just don't have refined enough taste for it yet,
That's
Vivek.
correct. That's exactly what somebody who'd go to a poetry slam would say. Uh, no, I mean like no.
Yeah.
I'm just being silly. I'm sure it's great. It's just like I have a tendency to make fun of people who take themselves very seriously, and
Mm,
so, people who tend to go to poetry slams do tend to take themselves very seriously sometimes. Not everybody, but so the content on stage sometimes is like that. There's not a lot of levity, so it's just nice to introduce some levity to
yeah.
the situation every now and then.
Could it be that you're scared of taking yourself too seriously?
Yes, I am. I'm very I'm very scared of taking myself too seriously because I did at one point, and I was a
Mm,
huge asshole to the people around me. I'm like,
mm,
okay, I'm
that's fair.
gonna be a little more self-aware now.
Yeah. But,
Yeah.
I think there's also a difference between, like, taking yourself too seriously in your day-to-day interactions with, like, your loved ones and your friends, your family, compared to when it's a performance, and taking your art seriously, I think is
Mhm.
somewhat different. At least
Yes.
that's how I think of it. Why are you mocking me?
No, the person, the my point of view there, not mine,
Mhm,
my side, which enforces the stigma here. It doesn't
mhm,
enforce the stigma. It's just like a
yeah.
lot of people making fun of them on Twitter. It's just like what they would say is like to call that art would be a stretch, is what they would say. It reminds me,
Okay,
reminds me
you
of a
know
scene
what?
on
We're gonna
Mad
end
Men.
this episode early because
We're getting
co-hosts have some drama right now.
some serious drama. Okay, for more drama, go to a local poetry slam because you'll find a lot of it.
Alright, haters gonna hate,
Oh my god.
Taylor Swift has a
No,
whole
no, no,
song about
no.
it, go listen to it sometime,
Here's an olive
but
branch. There's some real emotional uncovering that happens at poetry slams. So, why do you? Hey, I was trying to give you an olive branch, and you're now making fun of me for doing
because
that.
that sounded talk about self-righteous, that just sounded like you were
Self-righteous. I
trying
wasn't
to,
being self-righteous.
oh,
Um,
okay,
I'm
well,
just like, okay, there's a lot. I mean, you know that whole meme about like this meeting could have been an email.
mhm. I think it's a
This
dumb meme, but yeah.
the meme, I feel like you'd be one of the biggest. Interesting.
I
You don't
actually
use
have
the
a
meme very much?
I have a tweet about how I think that's an overstated that comment is, like, overused way too much.
I agree with you. I also never kind of got on with that whole thing. Like it's very
Yeah.
popular, and I thought that you would love it because you kind of enforce the hey, stupid silly meetings or
Yeah.
overdoing meetings or filling up your
Yeah.
calendar for nothing and stuff like that. You'd be a very fierce advocate against it, I would assume.
I am, and I think that's why, like, I appreciate the sentiment behind it, and I think there's totally truth. I mean, there's so many meetings I've been to where I'm like, "Yes, this meeting could have been and should have been an email," right? But I also think there's a lot of messages, a lot of exchanges I've had with people where I'm like, "This should just be a meeting. Why are we spending 3 days going back and forth on Slack? This would have been a 15-minute meeting or maybe an hour-long meeting, but at least we would all come to some sort of conclusion, be on the same page versus, like, having 15 fragmented conversations
Mhm.
where then you're like, "Oh, no, we forgot to add this person. Let's start a whole new one," So,
Mhm.
I think, for that meme, I agree with it if the context is right. If this meeting should have been an email, then it should have been an email. But if this email should have been a meeting, that's also just as valid. So, I think that it's trendier to say the one that's popular at this point, which is like, "Oh, meetings suck, no meetings, blah blah." And I mean, I get it. Meetings are draining. Good ones are energizing. This is kind of a meeting if you think about it, right? And like often it can be fun.
I wish I could give the side eye to somebody. No, kidding. No, it's fine. No, I'm actually with you on the whole thing. Almost everything. Like basically, I'm on your side of that whole thing because
Mm,
really, what that obviously in context, it's correct, but the under the subliminal message in this meeting could have been an email is that a lot of this is a huge problem of like most meetings are
yeah,
unnecessary and should have been emails. I think it's kind of like not that. I mean, it fights a lot with this email should have been a meeting thing too.
mhm,
That's very prevalent. It's much more prevalent than the meme would have you believe. Like it's very
yeah,
prevalent.
I
So
think
the
so.
real fight is between what is actually prevalent in the culture, and I don't think that that's actually that prevalent. This meeting should have been an email. Could have should have been an email thing. It's actually the other is also very prevalent, and yeah, like something that could have. been knocked out in a quick conversation. I mean, we know
Mhm.
this, right? Like we're going back and forth over an episode or something.
Mhm.
Hey, what should we do for the description or the notes or stuff like that?
Yeah.
Going back and forth over 3 days versus knocking it out in half an hour.
Mhm.
Like that's the power of a meeting. So I'm totally with you there. Anyway, the reason I invoke that is to say, just like that episode, just like the meme says, this meeting could have been an email. This poem could have been a therapy session, uh, or maybe should have. No, but again, I get it. Like,
I
why
totally
why
disagree with
spend
that.
$200 on therapy when you can do it for free at Slam Poetry?
And when you can share that therapy session with, make it a group therapy session with like 40 people, why not? Or 50?
Again, very against type. I wouldn't have assumed that you would be okay with, like, you would be the friendly one among the two of us to spilling all of your life
Oh,
secrets in front of a bunch of
so
strangers.
to be clear, maybe I should have clarified. I don't
You
have
didn't
the
do
gut.
anything. I got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Still,
Okay, I was gonna say I cheer, I clap, I judge, I do all the other things. I do not get on that stage. Um, so no, I don't have the guts, at least, and I also don't have the magical
mm,
way with words that those folks do, but like I have the
you don't think
you know,
magical is a bit too far here?
okay, you're just a straight up hater and I don't know where it's coming from. What slam poem hurt you? Like I don't understand.
No, no. I'm just being snarky. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I seriously like I think it depends obviously on the quality, right? Like if you're gonna so like the one I went to recently was it was a bunch of like folks who are going to be competing in like I forgot what it's called to be honest, but it's like a bunch of like poets who identify as women competing against each other for some like finals. And so these were like they knew what they were doing. Some of them were they delivered in a very heavy-handed manner, yeah, and that was their goal. Um I will admit I don't know that I gravitated to those ones always. It depended. I felt like some poets did a did it in a way that I appreciated it. Others it didn't resonate as much. But you know, it kind of you asked like also I guess what's been going on or what's been on my mind, and like it's just such a good reminder, like the power of belief capital and like telling someone that you appreciate their work and their art. Like at the end of it, you know, the judges got all like they had the numbers and stuff, and the girl who won second, I remember wanting to go up to her and talk to her because like all her posts, she did three, all of them did. Everyone who progressed, if you progressed to the next round, you did, you know, max of 3 poems. And she got second place. And so I just kind of figured, like, she was, I thought, incredible. And the friend I went with, both of us, we have very similar taste, I think, in these things. And so both of us were just, she was our favorite of the bunch. And I wanted to go talk to her, but I was like, I don't have much to say beyond just like, you're you're so good, you're incredible, you're amazing. Oh my God, all your stuff like resonated so hard, right? But I assume she probably hears this all the time because the last time I went to one of these things, yes, you can keep making fun of me, Vivek. The last time I went to one of these things, I went up to the person, that same friend, and we went there, and the two of us were both like, "Oh, this is our favorite poet." We coincidentally we told him that we thought he was great, and it was clear he hears that a lot. Like he was nice about it, he was very kind about it, and said, "Oh, thank you so much." But it didn't have much more reaction beyond that, right? He was just like, "Thank you." Like it was clear he'd heard it a bajillion times. This girl, I was a little hesitant because I was like, "Oh, she's probably heard it before," but I was dying to say something, so I did. And she was so taken aback, which is so funny because she won second place. You would think she would realize she's good, and I think she knew she was good, but um, she was so it seemed like she was genuinely touched. She'd only started going on stage 6 months ago, and so she was like, "Oh, you have no idea, like, that means so much." And I asked her, like, "When can I buy your book?" You know, and she was like, "I don't have one yet, but I'm working on it." And I was just it was just so cool to be like, "You know what? I'm glad I said something because I was afraid it would be like she would be like, "Ugh, another person telling me I'm great." But in this case, it you know, she appreciated it, which was nice. So and yeah, it's a really nice feeling to, I think, both be appreciated, but also to like tell people that you appreciate
Mm-hmm.
them.
Yeah, there's nothing that feels as good as, like, I mean, there's a lot of things I'm sure, but this feels really good. Just to give a compliment and have it be
Land.
received.
Hmm.
have it be received and appreciated, oh, feels really
Yeah.
good.
Which is something that not everyone is good at, like receiving compliments. Like I think people are often much better. The average person, I think, is probably better at giving compliments than receiving compliments, which is very interesting. And it's something that like I used to struggle with when I was younger. Like I just didn't, like the classic, someone gives you a compliment, you give them one back out of almost panic, or you just like, I still remember years ago, this was literally over a decade ago, a coworker told me that he liked my shirt. And instead of being a normal human being and saying thank you, I responded, that was random. Like, because I think I was just feeling awkward and I didn't know what to say. When like in retrospect, it's so obvious what you say thank you, right? But anyway, it was interesting because when I look back that far, I'm like, yeah, like once upon a time, I don't think I was very good and comfortable with compliments, and now it feels um, much easier, and it feels like that is the way that you accept the gift gracefully, is you accept it with grace, right? You don't find ways to deflect, and you take the intention and you honor it. So anyway, I've talked a lot.
Mhm.
What's going on in your world? We'll stop talking about slam poetry. I know you're not interested.
I'm actually very interested. It gives me endless sources of laughter. Kidding. No, I mean, with the compliments thing, just to finish on that, I always say it's accepting a compliment and saying thank you is not about the accuracy of the compliment. It's
Mhm.
almost always about welcoming the kindness and
Yes.
appreciation, the grace of the other person
Mhm.
first. And then, it's not really primarily about accuracy at all. It's somebody's trying to say, I like you. Somebody's
Yeah.
trying to say, I appreciate you. Somebody
Mhm.
like good. I'm giving you good. Can you,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and just saying thank you, thanks for giving me good is
Mhm.
more important than like, oh, whether somebody says, oh, you're a very, very common reaction to getting a compliment is like, I don't quite deserve that. I don't think that's
Yeah.
correct. Like,
Mhm.
wait, you sang really well. I wasn't happy
It
with
wasn't
what I
my
sang.
best,
Or wasn't
Yeah.
like all those like they're not very classy, first of all, in responses, right? Also
Mhm.
on the outside, they're very unconfident. And
Mhm.
they, like obviously we've all probably done them at some point and felt that way, but I make it a point to almost never like have any reaction except thank you first before I say
Mm.
anything else. Because you know why? For me, the history behind that is like, first, my dad always said when somebody says thank you, compliment, you have to do that. So he
Mm.
kind of taught me that early. But I think the bigger reason is, when you give a compliment and somebody doesn't take it or just brushes it off or just like boomerang compliments or
Mhm.
um,
Boomerang compliments, I like that, yeah.
yeah. Well, that one's like from the Art of Manliness blog, where they
Oh.
where they talk about how to take a compliment with class.
Mm.
Where they talk about what you don't want to do is a boomerang compliment.
Mm.
So but all those things. I mean, all things considered, that's not one of the worst responses. What you did might be one of the bad ones.
No,
That
it
would
was
have
bad.
broken my
It stuck
heart.
in my head. Like, I remember I
How did he
realized
react? I was going to ask.
I
Did
don't
his
even
face completely
remember.
fall?
I don't even remember. I just remember, like, being embarrassed about my reaction and being like, "Why did I
Oh,
say
okay.
that? That was so stupid." Like, I realized that immediately afterwards, but then I didn't wanna go back and be like, "Oh, actually, thank you." Like, I didn't know how to salvage it, and again, this was many years ago, and I was just being silly. But I think in a way, it's probably a good thing it happened because it stuck in my head, and I was like, I'm
Right.
not going to do that again. That was so. I think I was just truly very caught off guard, and I think part of it was because it was like I think it was like an old shirt. It wasn't, you know what I mean? But that's
Exactly.
again,
It's the
all of
accuracy
that
thing.
is
Yeah.
besides the point. Like it doesn't matter if it doesn't matter if you don't think it is good and anything, right? All that
Mhm.
matters is like the person who gave you the compliment, they saw something in your energy, they saw something in your being that they wanted to comment on, and they did, right? So,
Right, exactly. And if we're sure it's coming from a sincere place, which sometimes it's not, and so that it's okay to
yeah.
be different there. But if it's coming from a sincere and non-manipulative place, like
Mhm.
it's really primarily about the intention and the kindness. So
Yeah.
anyway, the reason I was saying it's like it's ingrained in my head is my dad taught me that. The other is that it's really vulnerable to give a compliment.
Mhm.
And I mean, it's at least somewhat vulnerable.
Mm.
And it really hurts when somebody doesn't take it. Or, I mean, boomerangs is not as bad, but it still doesn't, like, if you're not
Mhm.
received, it hurts. So I was like, okay, since I know what it's like to be on that side of it, I'm like, okay, if somebody gives me a compliment, I'm always going to be like, thank you. Like, regardless of if it was hard for them or easy for them or whatever, I'm like,
Mm.
thank you for doing that. So before I say anything else, right? Yeah. But that's a nice little detour. How am I doing? Good question. I think honestly, we've switched places because I'm definitely the tired one this time. Uh, yeah, I've been tired all week. It's been like
Yeah.
it's been a pretty hard week.
Mm.
Yeah, a lot of work related drama.
Mm.
But even otherwise, I think there's um, a lot of again. I think I'm dealing a lot with nervous system healing, learning to listen to my body without being dissociated. And it turns
Mhm.
out my body a lot of the time is saying, um, "Calm the fuck down, like take a break,
Mm.
recharge." Get out of the blankets. I'm like, okay,
Mm.
interesting. That's what my body's saying a lot of the time for real
Mm.
when I listen to it. And yeah, so even as we are talking, like I'm like, very conscious of my breathing, very
Mm.
conscious of being rooted in the lower chakras, really. Like, because a lot of tiredness and neurotic, especially neurotic tiredness and stuff that people like associate with, let's say, extroversion related fatigue.
Mm.
Like, oh, I was talking to people, that's happened.
Mm.
It's all up here. I can even feel it here. It's almost all in my
Mm.
neck, and it's here. And a lot of the relaxation and healing and coming back down to ground is a very literal coming back down to, it's draining the nervous energy to your pelvis, your navel, your, like, the lower chakras, letting it come down. So yeah, so that's definitely mainly what's on my mind is just like, how can we be more better grounded? I'm talking a lot like an introvert these days. You'll love it, Vidhika.
Wait, I never said anything.
Yeah, no, we've switched places in the introvert extrovert role
Oh, I
today.
see. Mm.
Yeah.
You know, I already tweeted about this, so it's funny because I'm you've probably seen, but there was I've really been thinking about that tweet that says like, my introvert or my extrovert eyes are bigger than my introvert stomach. And I love it. I can't.
Say that again. And what does that
Okay.
mean?
My Have you heard of the expression like my eyes are bigger than my stomach?
No.
Oh, okay. Education time. All right. So
Oh, okay, okay. Give
time
me
to
a
take notes.
muhavra. Give me a Hindi muhavra. I haven't.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
This
It's
is.
easy.
I'm gonna pull the non-American card here because I have no idea what that means. Yeah.
Oh, it's such a good I'm excited that I can be the one to, teach you
Mm,
this, Vivek, because it's one of my favorite expressions. Um, I learned it actually in college because
mm,
we would go to, like, the dining halls, and I would get, like, one of the dining halls had, like, an all-you-can-eat thing, all-you-can-eat buffet or whatever, and well, multiple different, what's the word? Like, the entire dining hall had, I think, 6 or 7 different stations, and all of them were all you can eat, and so I would come back with, like, more
I get
plates
it.
than anyone else,
Mm,
and so someone at one time, a friend commented like, "Oh my god, your eyes are way bigger than your stomach," right? And I was like, "What does that mean?" And obviously I figured it out and, loved it, and the idea is that, like, you're as in the very literal sense
you
in
can
that
want
case,
more than you can try.
I want more than I can actually eat, and so, like, I truly had every intention to try all the things on all 7 plates,
Mm,
and then it turns out, like, a plate and a half in, I'm like, "Oh, actually, I'm kind of a small human and I'm quite full and I can't eat the rest, but I don't like food waste, so now I'm gonna force myself to eat a little bit more, and then I'm gonna realize that that's not a good idea." And so, yeah.
mm.
So, going back to the kind of, this new take on on an old phrase, the idea of oh, wow, sorry, I just realized that there's a balloon hanging out in my peripheral vision, and it has somehow been cut open, but it's still hanging. Okay, anyway, it doesn't matter. Forgive my distraction. And yeah, so in this case, it's like sometimes we
Mm.
want to be really social, right? Like our eyes are almost extroverted. Like we look at events and we look at engagements and we look at the friends we want to keep up with and we're like, "Oh, I want to do all of these things." But then you only have so much energy. And so like your introversion or introverted self is kind of the stomach. Like there's a limit there that you kind of forget when you're planning. And I was just talking, the friend that I went to the poetry thing with, she and I were talking about how both of us have been kind of doing that, where we've been like, just not on purpose even, but just there's lots of things that are happening that are interesting. And we're like, yeah, we'll go to this, we'll go to that, we'll go to this, we'll go to that. And then during the week, we're like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I just want to do nothing, you know? So just trying to be a little bit more mindful now of like, okay, I need at least some days of just no plans, nothing to do at all, sitting at home, you know, just resting almost.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think I have very, very on theme for me this week. That's
Mm.
that's
Yeah, sounds like what you were describing a
realizing there's
little.
a real like that tendency to want to veg out is actually a very healthy one.
Yeah.
And, I thought it was something only losers dealt with. Sorry,
Mm,
I mean introverts. Sorry, I'm just also kidding. No, I mean like
okay.
it's the most
He hates
important
introverts. He hates
slam poetry.
slam
Yes.
poetry. There's a lot of things that Vivek just doesn't
No,
like.
no, no. Genuinely, I thought what I really mean is like I thought it was something I didn't deal with. Like, it's not something I really deal with. It's like something other people deal with
Mm,
because I genuinely didn't.
hmm,
Maybe because a lot of my life was doing that anyway.
mm.
But a lot of my life was dissociated, I think. But when you're actually paying attention to your system and you're trying to be like
Like you're
present,
acknowledging your own needs, right?
yeah, I mean, if dissociation, like trauma-based dissociation and the freeze response, like a lot of the time you're not in your body. You're not actually feeling yourself. You're like for me specifically, I think a lot of this is functional freeze. I'm caught scrolling or watching
Mhm,
YouTube or something. There's I'm not in my body really. And the more I'm trying to get into my body, I'm listening to what the body's saying. And what the body's saying a lot of the time is actually what Rosano, our friend, would say, which I noticed him say a lot, which is like, hey, I need a break and I need a
mm,
uh, it's not something I associate with myself at all. Because I genuinely didn't need to do it a lot. And
mm,
now not that I'm paying more attention, it turns out I have to do it way more often than I thought I did.
mhm.
And so I think I can really relate to being drained, and not just by people, by stimulation of any kind. You
Yeah.
know,
I
yeah,
mean, sensory overload is a thing. Yeah.
yeah, and all these things I had associated with whether it was like introverts or people who were not social or people who were had a different threshold than me sensory
Mm,
wise. The most important thing, it's not something I associate with me.
yeah.
I didn't know what technical association I made with it. I just knew that it was not me. And
Yeah.
now that it is me, I'm like, ooh, interesting.
Mm,
And there's also this IFS thing where there's this inner dad that I'm trying to be more mindful and cultivating of, that is more compassionate and
mm,
more caring and can be a real uh, nurturing parent. And when that means I need to tell somebody, hey, I need a cat, yeah, I'm going to play it by ear tonight.
mhm,
I don't know if I can hang out. And then when I don't feel like it, saying, hey, you know what, can we get together later this week? Something like
mhm.
that. I've been doing that a lot, and it's kudos to me. Just like,
Yeah, that's awesome, especially if it's not something you've been used to. That's an extra step to be like to A, recognize that within yourself, B, sometimes recognize after the fact, like, "Oh, I calibrated wrong. I thought I'd be okay, but I'm not." But it's not too late. You know, you can still and as long as you're not as long as you're learning from those patterns and not constantly doing that forever, like, people are pretty understanding, you know?
mhm, right.
Um, yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because like, I feel like I had a similar, um sort of similar thing happened earlier this week where like on Thursday I basically had, been doing something every like night of the week. And I knew I was gonna be tired, but then on Thursday it was like restaurant week and a friend was like, "Oh, do you wanna go to these restaurants?" and sent me a bunch of like a list of several options. And my honestly, my inclination, and I love eating out and stuff like that, but my inclination was like no, I don't want to go, because I knew I would need a day's break, because I knew
Mm.
like Friday, Saturday were also gonna, I was just like, every day is going to be busy. I need a break. But also I realized that like she had imposed some time limits. So she was sort of talking about, she was like, okay, yeah, we can go at 6 and then I have to get back in time for this. And one thing I know about myself is I tend not to like, especially social hangouts, like I tend not to like them to be super duper rushed. Like if I'm catching up
Mhm.
with a friend, like I don't want to feel like we have to keep checking the time, being like, oh, we got to go in 30. Like I don't like that. I want to be able to just relax. So I'm totally fine rescheduling a month later, but I want to feel a little bit relaxed when that happens and go with the flow. And so I think already I was like, I'm going to have to rush from work. Then I'm going to, go there and we're going to be rushed. And then we're going to like, the whole thing wasn't settling with me. But at this point, I've said no so many times to plans that she's invited me to that
Mm.
I think, even though I'm usually very good at the whole make sure, when you, at least in the last few years, I've been very good at like, make sure and saying yes to someone else. You're not
Mhm.
saying no to yourself. Because I kept saying no, I think I convinced myself, like, I actually do think like that salmon dish sounds really nice. Yeah, yeah, like I think I want to go. So I agreed to going, and because I'm the type that usually if I commit to something, like unless there's an extenuating circumstance, like I've committed to it. And I planned on going, and Thursday I had a headache. I did not feel like going, even more so than before. I was hesitant to go, but I was like, well, I have to go. I already said I would. And then she messaged me and asked like, hey, are we still on? And I was like, okay, well, now that you're asking me, I told the truth, right? I just said, hey, actually, like, I really feel like staying home today. But if you are super looking forward to this, and if going is contingent on my company, then I will come anyway. Otherwise, if I'm being honest, I would kind of rather stay home today. And she was like, oh, actually, I totally don't mind going alone. Like, it's fine. We can do something another day. Right. So, and I felt so, I like sigh, it's like a sigh of relief. I felt so much better afterwards. And I'm glad I stayed in. Like, it was what I needed that night, So it's a good feeling. I'm so proud, and I'm glad that you're doing it more. Yeah.
Mm. Mhm. Thank you. It's funny because I feel like every time I talk to you, I feel like I get a glimpse into how many friends you have. Like, oh, I had this friend. We did this, and then I did this, and then I did slam poetry, and I did. Oh, I'm seeing another friend today, and I have to pick up lehengas. Like, jeez, it's just like you have such a full social life. It's very cool.
The lehengas are
Uh,
not part of my social life.
I know,
Okay,
I
the
know.
lehengas are like it's just a thing I got to do.
Yeah, yeah. Also, wait, we recorded on Thursday. What a champ!
Did we? Yes, yes, we did. Wait, was that Thursday?
You're a real
Yeah,
champ.
you're right. It was Thursday. Thank you, thank you. Well, I mean, I didn't go. Like, I didn't end up going.
Still, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Good, good, good. Okay, so for this next segment, I think we've completed our check-ins. Here's what I'm gonna. So this is what I wrote down before our episode, and I think we talked about this a while back, but I'm gonna ask you a question I've always meant to ask you, and that
Mm,
is for you to. I'm gonna
I'm
read your
scared.
Twitter bio right now. Okay.
I'm scared.
Let's
I got
see.
no prep for this.
Oh, yeah, sure. A lot
On
of
the
prep
spot
needed.
improv.
Okay, so your Twitter bio says experience design, behavioral science, marketing strategy, plus human connection. Love words, wit, wondering, and wandering. Ah, beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
love it so far. Now comes the extremely controversial part.
Okay.
Dessert first advocate. Explain yourself. What on earth does that mean?
It really shouldn't be controversial. Wait, are you saying that you take issue with this as in you're not a dessert first advocate? Are you a
I
dessert
don't even
last
know what it
advocate?
means.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. So, well, you know how usually when you go to a restaurant,
Hmm.
dessert is the absolute it's an afterthought, right?
Right.
It's the
Uh-huh.
kind of thing that you go through the appetizers, you go through the entrees. Um, Sometimes the waiters won't even remember to ask you if you want dessert, and then you leave and you're like, oh, wait, they never asked us about dessert, right? It's always an afterthought.
Hmm.
So my advocacy, which doesn't take very active forms as of late, but it basically is
You're not
just,
writing slam poetry about this?
I should. Maybe that'll be my debut slam poem. Is just about dessert first advocacy. I'll make the whole
A
thing
very
really
self-righteous
silly.
take on this. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Talk about dramatic and taking myself seriously. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. Um, yeah. So I just think that Well, so I just like dessert. I think it's really fun. I think it's tasty.
Right.
I'm convinced that it's like a nice note to even start a
Okay.
meal on. And
Okay.
so
So what you literally mean? Don't order any appetizers. Don't order main course or an entree. Actually, go to the dessert menu, get something, and then eat something else.
no, not
Appetizers later
necessarily
or
that. I'm just
main course
not so
later.
it's not like you can't it's not like you must start your meal with dessert, but, like, I'm very supportive if somebody wants to start their meal with something that's, like, sweet. Yeah,
So what
and
have you? I mean, give me an example of this. Have you done this
okay, so,
before?
like, some time ago, I remember going to, an Italian restaurant, and, like, I didn't really think twice about this, but, like, I ordered an Afogato, which, if you're familiar with Afogatos, they're like, espresso with ice cream.
Yeah. Wait.
Um,
You ordered an avocado before anything else, and do you go for lunch or breakfast or
it was for dinner.
dinner? Dinner.
Yes.
Okay, got it. So what did the other people order?
So, I th I don't remember, to be completely honest.
But not dessert, right?
I don't think so. I think I may have ordered did I order 2 Afogatos? I can't remember now. But in any case, I'm glad this is, I'm glad you had no idea what to expect. But
I
in any
mean, I
case
had an idea what to expect. It's just hilarious to actually hear somebody say they did this. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you ordered two
um,
avocados.
I think so, don't quote me on that. But basically, like, people usually order drinks, right? They order alcoholic drinks, but, like, sometimes I'll do that too. But in this case, it was oh, you know what? To be clear, I guess technically it was a dirty affogato, which meant it had a little bit of alcohol in it. But regardless,
Sure.
I was
Uh-huh.
looking at the drinks menu and I was like, of these drinks, the one I want is an affogato. And so, like, I don't think I thought twice about the fact that that is like, I wasn't like, I have to be dessert first. It was just like, oh, that's the one that I
Yeah,
want.
yeah,
I
got
went
it.
with it,
Then what
right?
did you do?
Ordered food, had my affogato.
You had okay, what did you eat after ice
Pasta.
cream?
I love pasta, so obviously pasta. That's why I was at an Italian
Wait,
restaurant.
wait. So you had an affogato with coffee and ice cream and all that stuff, and then you
Uh-huh.
ordered like I don't know, like spaghetti or
Something
Alfredo
carbonara probably. I think it was like
carbonara?
tagliatelle carbonara, yeah.
How are you doing this? How are you? So I just can't stop. I mean, pun intended. I can't stomach this idea of, uh, okay, so you go to a restaurant, you eat the like after I eat dessert, I've just completely spoiled my appetite. I can't eat anything else. It's so
I
sweet
think
and
that's
like,
mental. I think that's in people's heads. I think that's a social construct. I
ah,
swear to God. I think
oh
people have
my good
been
lord.
conditioned to believe that, like, once you eat dessert, it's because it's our mental model is that dessert is the end of the meal. And so I think if people start with dessert, they feel like, "Oh my God, my meal is now over." I'm not so convinced it's biological. And I should probably do some
Well, I'm
research
not saying it's
'cause
purely biological, but
yeah.
I mean, even going by taste, like I don't know, it feels extremely like, yeah,
Hmm.
it's something I file it under things that I would never
Have you ever
do.
tried?
I I'm good. I'm really good. Like, like it feels like such a
Don't knock it
like
if you
the
haven't
whole
tried it. That's
point
all
of
I'm saying.
dessert, Vidhika, the whole point of dessert is like you've done the heavy lifting, right? And now it's just, it's the dessert should be like coasting. It should be like floating on a cloud. Okay. And if you haven't eaten and you're still hungry, first of all, okay, here's my thing.
Hmm.
I would never eat dessert if I was hungry. Okay.
Well, it's not to satiate hunger. That's not the point.
Yeah.
But yeah,
If you
go
go
on.
to a restaurant, you're probably hungry, right?
Not necessarily.
Okay. So let's
Restaurants
say
have
you're not hungry.
experiences.
Okay, let's say you're
Okay.
not hungry. I still get it if you're eating the only thing you're eating the whole meal is dessert. But let's say you finish dessert, and how can you eat pasta after
But wait,
that?
but here's the thing, you don't have to like, the affogato, it's not like you, like, gulp that, you finish that, and then you move on to your pasta, right? Like, it's an accompaniment. Just because the first sip was sweet or just because that's what you order doesn't mean that's the only thing you're allowed to have in order, like and again, I'm not
So
advocating
wait,
that, like
wait. So you eat the avocado with the pasta then?
yeah, like, sip on it while I'm having pasta.
Wait, it's ice cream.
I mean, it's ice cream and espresso, so
So
it's
I
like
mean,
a
so it stays for a while, it gets melted, and you sip on
yeah.
it. Oh, okay. So it's a milkshake. You're having a
Okay, so
milkshake.
you haven't really had an affogato, I can tell.
I've had a avocado for
Clearly, it's been a while.
desserts, for actual dessert at the end. Yeah, after I eat everything, and it's when it's still ice cream, not when it's a milkshake.
There. But here's the thing, it's not like I go to a restaurant and, like, we'll be like, "Hey, dessert menu, please." Like, no, that's not also, I don't talk to the waiters like that. But, like, um, it's not like, it's not
Mhm.
like a necessity, but I will say there are times where I will, especially if it's a restaurant that I have been looking forward to, or I think that they might have good desserts or whatever, I will sometimes ask for the dessert menu at the beginning, which I think freaks people, like, out because I think they're very confused as in I suspect what goes through their head is like, "Oh, is she only gonna order dessert?" Like, that's probably what they're
As
worried
it
about.
should. Yes. It freaks people out, as it should. Yes.
No, no,
Uh,
I disagree. But,
yeah,
but that's
anyway.
only because, sometimes it's not because I plan to order the dessert. A lot of times it's not because 'cause I'm gonna order the dessert right away, like, I will stick to social conventions and what my dining partners want, and, like, I'll eat it later, but sometimes I
Mm,
like to just, like, mentally know, like, "Oh, what are."
this is what
It
I
gives me
have coming
something to
for me
look
later.
forward to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives me
Mhm.
something to look forward to. I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna get to eat that," and that also reminds me, like, if I'm getting full, I need to put a cap on that because I need to save room for dessert. Because how many times have you been to a restaurant where everyone's like, "Oh, dessert? No, I'm too full, I'm too full." That's just like, the way it
No,
goes.
okay, that I totally understand. I think you've taken a very necessary corrective, which is,
It was
like,
a yes
okay,
and. It was not me overwriting what I said before.
I know. That's you though. Here's my opinion. My
Mhm.
opinion on that is that's the work of the devil. What you just said, it's like Shaitan has just completely possessed you. What is this? Like this is ridiculous. A very necessary corrective to not having dessert ever because I'm too full. It's an afterthought. Yeah, okay, sure. There's a corrective there, and yes, it should be. People have it coming, and it should. You've just taken that and like gone to absolute like the 16th rung uh, of hell with it, and that's going to be my take on that. And
Okay.
this is the segment where we both cancel each other. So
Yeah.
you've canceled me, and I've canceled you.
Yeah,
Yes,
I mean,
this is like
so far,
absolutely cancel worthy take. Yeah.
all I'm getting from this, Vivek, is that you are a hater. You've kind of so far given shit, about poetry, which, like, who doesn't like poetry? Okay, a lot of people, but they should. Anyway,
I love
poetry.
poetry. I did not say anything about poetry,
Okay,
ma'am.
slam poetry. Okay,
Yeah,
whatever.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
You don't
yeah,
like slam poetry. You seem to have a little bit of a problem with introverts, if I heard correctly.
yeah.
You seem not to like dessert, which also is problematic. So, yeah, I don't know,
I
man.
l in in
And,
in in pure cancel culture fashion, you've completely misrepresented my perspectives on all these things.
perfect. I'm glad I'm checking all the boxes,
You've
doing it
completely
right.
misrepresented my perspective on all of them.
I was gonna
But yes,
say,
go ahead. Mm.
one of the actual phrase, I think I read it when I was in high school, and I was like, "Oh, this is cute." Um, there's a phrase that's like, "Life's short, eat dessert first," and it's, like, really cheesy and kind of silly, but it stuck in my head, and I think
Right.
it kind of goes to
Mm.
actually one of the intentions I have for this year, which is not to eat dessert first, but it is to, like, not procrastinate joys, right? And to,
Mm.
like, make sure that you are, um like, life is short and you don't know when the perfect time for something
Mm.
is going to come, and so, like, if there's something that you really wanna do, you don't have to stick to a certain order. Like,
Right.
you can, in a lot of cases, you can make that order what you want it to be.
Mm.
So, yeah, I'm gonna have
I
to do
agree with that.
more and more research on
You
the specifics of the digestive system, but,
No, no. Yeah, okay, you've kind of won me over with a little bit. I mean, I still think that it's the work of the
progress is one
devil.
step at a time, one episode at a
I
time.
still think that take is the work of the devil. But I do think that like I love that. That's a beautiful intention to have. Like, don't procrastinate your joy, and like yeah. I mean, every now and then, if I'm at home, I will eat. I will eat the cake a little bit. I'll have a couple bites of cake or whatever. Put it back in the fridge before I eat
Yeah.
my actual food. Yeah, I never do that outside, but yeah, it's fine.
Is it 'cause you're
Okay.
afraid of looking weird, though?
No, that's not the reason.
No?
It's more like, hey, if I'm really hungry, like if I'm going to a dessert, especially an Italian restaurant, if I'm going to a dessert, if I'm going to a restaurant, I mean,
Mhm.
especially an Italian restaurant where, like, dude, I'm not paying for it. Like, I'm not gonna let the sugar go to my head first. Are you kidding?
Mhm.
When I'm floating, when I'm eating all my, um, only metaphorically, when I've eaten my vegetables and my hunger is satiated, then oh yeah, I'm ready to float on a cloud, baby. Yes, hit me with
Mm.
that dessert menu. Yeah,
I
then I
mean, it's
can.
all sugar in your body at the end of the day. If you're eating a bunch of pasta, right?
It's
That's
true,
all
but like
sugar
I don't know,
too.
like
Like,
the idea of eating dessert when I'm hungry
mhm.
appeals to me like negative 100. It almost repulses me.
But I
Like
think,
I
okay, so
just
like
can't do it.
as you describe that, like it depends so much on what it is, right? So like if somebody were to
Oh,
give me gulab
yes.
jamun
This
or
is a
something,
great segue. Go ahead. I'll tell you why.
oh
Yeah, go
yeah.
ahead. Uh-huh.
If someone were to give me like gulab jamun or something incredibly sweet, like as the start, like yes, that would be a little off-putting as well. But that's why I think like it's nuanced, like with anything else, right? It's like an affogato is fine, or like a couple bites of ice cream is very manageable. I don't usually have ice cream at the beginning because like it'll melt and you can't enjoy it in its full glory. But yeah, you kind of have to pick and choose, like depending on what
Okay.
works in that context, right?
Yeah, exactly. And ice cream just wouldn't enter my list of kosher foods there. But we'll see what our audience thinks of this what I believe is an extremely controversial um, point of view from you. But I think everybody will unanimously applaud the "Don't procrastinate your joys." You've just integrated with something so profound that it's basically unarguable. It's inarguable.
You know,
it's wonderful.
my
But
my
speaking of
advocacy
specific
is going a long
desserts,
way. I'm glad.
yeah, it has, and you've put a lot of work into it in this episode. Okay, speaking of specific desserts, this is also where we go into. Okay, you know what? I'm going to use this as a signal for new segments. Cupcake wars. Back. Okay, this is
I
one of
love
the
that.
most. Speaking of controversial takes from you, I genuinely think this is probably the most cancel-worthy take I've ever seen in my life. Like, if you thought I was a hater before, like I'm the biggest hater right now because you're hating on something that's so like I can't imagine
Fundamentally
this.
logical that you can't process how
Seriously.
logical my
So
logic is.
just to tell our audience, Vidhika hates cupcakes. I'm
Okay,
almost
first
embarrassed
of
to have her as
all,
a co-host right now. I've never been more embarrassed at this moment than to announce this. But Vidhika hates cupcakes. Oh my god. So
first of all, I never said
explain yourself.
I did not say the word hate, I don't believe. Did I? I think I
I'm
said
pretty sure you
I
did.
am
But
pretty sure I
anyway, go
said that
ahead.
they're overrated, which I stand by 100%. They are
Okay,
so overrated.
give it to me.
And
What's
would you
what's
look
wrong
at
about them?
this? Would you look at this, Vivek? What is it this I have? You see
Wait a
this?
sec.
Could
Oh,
it
okay.
be? Could it
Uh-huh.
be? I have a cupcake in front of me.
You have something you really hate in front of you.
I
Great.
don't really hate. I think is overrated, but you know, I'm gracious and I can accept gifts. So, um,
My
yes.
compliments, huh?
What exactly? What do you want to know about my
Do you know what would be
cupcake?
really funny?
What?
If somebody gave you a cupcake as a gift and you were like, that's weird. Because it would be exactly the kind of thing that you would do, given your bigoted views on cupcakes. Oh my
Oh,
god.
you know, very
Good lord.
understandable views.
What do I want to know? I mean, explain yourself. How the hell are they over? They're fucking amazing. Cupcakes are
Okay,
so
okay.
delicious.
Don't say
Oh
you
my
didn't
god.
ask for it. Don't say
Uh
you.
huh.
Okay, where do I begin? I mean, first of all, this is not even attacking cupcakes directly, but there are so many much better desserts out there in the world that like why would I eat a cupcake when I can consume calories in ways I enjoy? You know what I mean? Like,
What do you not enjoy about a cupcake? It's
okay, so first of
fluffy
all,
and sweet and small. It's not a whole cake. It's just a little bit, and so you
oh,
don't have the pressure of eating the whole thing.
no,
It's
okay,
just
okay, okay.
it's mobile.
Disagree.
It's mobile. It can be. Oh, it's just the act of looking at it, the
Okay, it's
softness.
almost impossible to
Ah,
eat a cupcake without first of all getting your hand sticky, which drives me nuts. I don't like that at all. Um, yeah,
really?
I'm not a fan.
Okay, between a cake
Crumbs
and a
are
cupcake, which is more sticky and messy?
wait, between what?
A real full cake and an actual and a
So I'm
cupcake.
actually not very fond of real full cakes either.
Oh, here we go. There. Okay, so now, okay, there we go. That's where
But if I had to
it's getting
pick,
even worse. You're making it
but if I
worse for
had to
yourself.
pick between a cupcake and a real cake, I would pick a real cake. But real cakes, like so ice cream cake is great, mousse cakes are great, cheesecake is great. Like French silk pie, that sort of stuff is great. But like regular cake, unless it's from Whole Foods, because I admittedly do think some of their cakes are very good. Generally cake is meh. Cupcakes are more meh. So yes. Okay, I'm gonna address one of your points.
Shaitan has just completely possessed you. Good lord. Ah,
Uh,
it's such a sad life, gentlemen, ladies and
well,
gentlemen.
I
Just
know.
feel sorry for our co-host here. I don't know what to say. Yeah.
I think yeah, it's you know, it's fine. If you live closer, I would just any cupcakes that came my way, I would be happy to send and then you wouldn't
Mm.
mind. You wouldn't mind having someone that
I
you
would
knew
love them because
didn't
they're
like
they're
cupcakes.
amazing. They're life-changing little drops, little cloudy bits of heaven. That's what it is.
Okay,
It's
so
little
wait.
clouds of just joy. A
No,
cupcake is a
okay.
cloud of
Can
joy
I tell you,
that you
you
can
so made a point earlier, I'm trying
consume.
to remember what it was about what did you say? Um, you said something about them being easy to eat? No, they're the opposite of easy to eat. How on earth okay, so you know how burritos
No,
are
no, I
like
didn't say easy to eat. I agree. I agree. I mean, it can be a little
they're unwieldy AF. They are not easy to eat.
okay.
Like burritos
I
are easy. Burritos, for instance, are not tacos, burritos, right? They can be very messy, but they're worth it. I'm like, yes, I'm gonna make a mess. I'm gonna look like a fool, but I will be happy at the end of this, so it's okay. With a cupcake, it's like it's going to do you start with just the icing? Do you just eat you it's almost cupcakes aren't integrated, right? Like you have to eat the things separately and
no. Ah! No, no, no,
or
no.
you don't
Please don't
have
eat them
to,
separately. Okay, maybe that's why you hate them. One bite has to contain every layer. Please, this
but
is the golden sandwich rule.
it's impossible to have an entire cupcake that way, right? Like the frosting is never going to be with all of the
I
cake.
eat all my cupcakes that way. Like, look,
But there's never enough
I will give you that cupcakes can be a little bit messy to eat. I was just saying they're easy to transport. Like, okay, you can give somebody a slice of a cupcake in their hand. Like, you can just give it to them. You can do that with a slice of cake. You
an
need
ice cream cone is easy to transport. People walk around with ice
a
cream cones all the time.
cone. Yeah, I mean,
An
even
ice
that's
cream cup
way
is easy to
worse.
transport.
Yeah, you have to put it in a cup. You have to take it and then put it in a cup and give somebody a cup. Like it requires infrastructure. Where in a
A
cupcake, the
cupcake requires
infrastructure
one of
is
those little
self-contained. It's already got that wrapping thing, and then you just handle it by the wrapping thing, and give it to somebody. You can't give somebody,
but
hey,
somebody had to
let
put
me
it
let
in
me
the
send you home
wrapping
with some
thing.
ice cream. You have to scoop some ice cream, put it in a cup, and give it to somebody. Again,
Whoa.
that's fine. It's okay. I'm not hating on ice cream. Ice cream's amazing. I love it,
Oh,
especially
good. Okay,
vanilla.
I'm glad
I
we
hate
agree on
mint
that at
chocolate.
least.
But
You what?
that's for a different time. That's
Did
for a
you say
different
you
time.
hate chocolate?
I hate mint chocolate.
Oh, I don't love mint chocolate either, so we're
Thank
okay.
God. Thank God. Thank God. Um, but yes, I mean, I think, look, the limitations of consumption aside, like it's good, it's tasty. The limitations of the consumption aside, but even the limitation, I can give you that they can be crumbly and yeah, a little bit messy. They're nowhere as messy as a burrito. And what I was talking about was not like the ease of consumption. I was just talking about like the ease of transportation. It's just easy to hand. Like, let's say you go to a like a potluck, or potluck is too much. But let's say you just go to a party and you don't know anyone that well, but you were gonna bring something. Are you gonna get something that is like that's gonna require like I don't know, like cake will require you have to cut it. You have to have like 20 plates to pass around the cut pieces of cake. Every slice needs its own thing. Like it's a lot of infrastructure. Where cupcakes just so easy. It's so light on the
So,
extras.
maybe
You just
it's a
buy it and
difference
then just like lift it out of the thing and the cup and then give it to them.
but maybe it's a difference of values, right? Because, like, for instance, if you by that logic, cupcakes at least require the little I don't know what it's called, the little thing that holds
The
it
wrapper,
together, right?
yeah,
The wrapper thing. Cookies don't even require that, right? You can
yeah,
load them all up in a box. They
yeah.
take
Cookies
up
are just easier.
very
Yeah,
little space, right? So
yeah.
you could argue that, oh, then by that logic, cookies are the best. Like, but it
No,
all
no,
depends
but
on your
I'm not
values
using that
because
logic to say that cupcakes are better. I was just you
okay,
were picking on my logic of like whether it's easy and easy to eat, but I was not saying they were easy to eat. I was just saying they were easy to
oh,
transport,
okay, well,
right?
so I guess the
Like
easy to
they're much
transport
closer to a cookie than they are to ice cream. Let's say, ice cream
yes.
is much harder.
Yeah,
So that's what I was saying. I wasn't saying that they were. I was just, again, I'm not saying that makes them good.
I
What
see
makes
it.
them good is the divine taste of them.
No.
The
Negative.
absolutely divine
Um,
taste is what makes them good. Like I said, that's not the reason. If something is like very very like you said, right? Burritos are not easy to
but
transport,
they're
or
but they're worth it.
yeah,
There has to
exactly.
be
So
ROI.
I'm not
Cupcakes just
arguing.
don't
I'm,
have
I'm
the ROI.
arguing on the merits, not on the on the side benefits.
Okay,
I'm not. Yeah.
so that's fair, but because you made the transportation point, I mean, I would a little bit of a tangent slightly, but like I would argue that just because something is quicker to serve does not like some of the best things are like if let's say you're hosting and you have
Right.
people come over, there's potential beauty in the fact that people have to scoop the ice cream and put it in their little bowls and talk to each other while they do
Potential
it,
beauty. Oh my
right?
god. Oh god. I agree with the point, but Jesus, potential beauty sounds like exactly something a slam
I
poetry
know. A slam poet
consumer
wannabe,
would do
okay? I'm
this.
not I'm not
Yeah.
there yet.
Not a poet, but even a poet, slam poetry consumer would say.
Oh,
But
fair, fair.
yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm arguing on the merits, not on not
Okay.
on whether, I'm not saying it's easy to disperse. That's why it's good. I'm saying
Yeah.
it's good because it's good. It's fucking amazing. It's life
Okay, so
changing.
let me
Uh,
give you another reason,
yeah.
right? Like, I wasn't intending for this to be an ice cream versus cupcakes battle, but that seems to be
Yeah.
the
Somehow
easy
it's becoming ice. But
go for
yeah.
it.
Okay.
So, like, one of the things is with cupcakes, it's like they're so I just don't like them, but let's put that aside, right? Like the fact that I don't like the taste of them, generally speaking. There isn't much variety. There variety in terms of like, can you make many different kinds of cupcakes? Yes, but typically when someone is serving cupcakes, when someone's making cupcakes, even if you were to go to a cupcakery, which I went to one last night, by the way, um, don't worry, it wasn't for me. There are like maybe one with a lot of variety might have like 10 different types, right? Because with cupcakes you have to make them in batches, so there are only so many. There's a limiting reagent, right? You can only make so many. However, with I mean, hello, Baskin Robbins, I don't like to eat there anymore, but like 31 flavors, right? Like there's with ice cream you can have so many
Wait, wait,
different
wait.
flavors because you can store it forever.
Right.
Versus cupcakes, they go bad if you make too many different kinds. Like it's just
Yeah,
not
but at a
efficient.
time, you can only. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
but I
but I
mean,
like
come on, that's
variety.
not a fair comparison.
It is
Like
because I don't
making
want to.
versus store. Like you're talking about making cupcakes. So
No,
the
no,
same
no.
argument would apply if you were talking about making ice cream.
But I'm
Like
not
they
talking
would.
about making it. I'm talking only as a consumer. I do not make cupcakes or ice cream. But as a
Right.
consumer of them, if I go somewhere, if I go to a shop with ice
Come
cream,
on.
there's
Of
going to be
course, you
so
can get
many
a
flavors.
get a set of 4 totally different cupcakes from a cupcake store.
Yeah,
That's
but
the most
I
common
can't,
offering.
but I can't eat 4 cupcakes in one sitting. I can eat like multiple types of ice
Hey,
cream.
come on, come on. You can put it in the fridge and eat it over a week. Come on.
A cupcake, but that's the thing. It'll go stale so fast.
Not if it's in the
Ice
fridge.
cream
It won't.
lasts like forever.
It's fair, fair. Yeah, but anyway. Okay.
I'm
Uh,
winning this. I know I am. Anyway, what?
you're not winning. Like, I genuinely think, like, yeah, the spirit of Shaitan is completely like taken over
Okay, why don't
your
you give
body.
me something beyond just cupcakes are good? Tell me more.
I kind of did. Like, okay, first of all, they're
You said they were
fluffy.
divine, but
There
like
is a textural variety in it that is just uh it's so beautiful. Okay, that textural variety. So the icing is a different texture than the base. There's two textures at least, and
okay.
then even within the base you can have embedded things just like you have in ice cream. So that's one thing. I like the variety there. I also just love icing on anything. So even regular cake I love because there's icing in it. I just love that icing. There's something so pure about icing. It's just sugar that is not pretending to be anything else. I'm like naked in front of you and I'm honest about what I do. And I'm not wearing all these farcical and like artificial, like there's no artifice. It's so honest in what it does. And so I love icing. I just love icing.
It's
So cupcakes have
unadulterated
icing on
sugar
top.
that doesn't taste good though,
It tastes
typically.
amazing. What is wrong with you? Icing tastes amazing. I love, like, again,
Mm,
if you'd caught me in India, like I didn't have much of a sweet tooth. This is all coming from a person who never had a sweet tooth for most of his life and
mm,
developed one because America is such a weirdly fucked up, like, I don't
mm.
know. I started having much more of a sweet tooth as I
Yeah,
stayed in
it's an
America
addiction,
for longer.
right? I mean, this is I'm trying to my I do have a massive sweet tooth and I've
Yeah.
for a little bit this year I did better about like I didn't crave sugar much. I don't know why, and then I kind of came back over the holidays and now it's back in full force, but um
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So okay. So textural variety, the inherent textural variety, even if it's just two textures at least, the fact that there's icing, it's amazing, and then the fact that it's fluffy is just like incredibly, like it's not cotton candy. That's too fluffy, and then but it's not like cookies, which are not fluffy at all, right?
How
Fluffiness
many
is just such a
do people
warm and completely like endearing quality to a thing, which is why I love cake. Sponginess and fluffiness is just a beautiful it's just so soft. When you think dessert, you want, yeah, of course, we want our ice cream. We like all kinds of textures, but this is a texture. This is like lajavad. Like you want the fluffiness is just something. You know what? Like, see the difference between gulab jamun and rasgulla. Rasgulla has a
fluff?
fluffiness,
Mhm.
right? It's a
It's
sponginess.
less dense.
Even if it's like
Yeah.
immersed in in
Mhm.
in syrup and everything, there's that we all love that sponginess, right? There's something to be said for that. And cupcakes that are fluffy just like have my whole heart. I
So
love it. I love it. And then
mm,
also I think I just like biting into. I'm not going to sit here and say I like the messiness, but I will say um I like the compactness. It doesn't have to be one pet peeve I have against desserts is like, especially American desserts, is like there is so much to eat. And I didn't grow up with much of a sweet tooth. I can't really eat that much sugar before my tongue gets saturated and I can't
Mm.
it's not sweet anymore. Like the first few bites are really the first 5 or 10 bites. That's where all the magic is. Like max. After 10 bites, it's kind of saturated. I'm not gonna really enjoy it that much. It's
This is
like really good.
fascinating
So a
'cause
one cupcake is the perfect size.
okay,
It's
well,
like
first
so
of
good.
all,
Or two cupcakes,
cupcakes
maybe.
cupcakes can be so many different sizes, first of all, right? And
Sure.
that could I would actually argue as that's a point in favor of maybe a cupcake is the fact that they can be mini and they can be big and whatever. But like
And they're
that
modular and small and like
but
they're
that blows my mind what you're saying because like so as someone with a sweet tooth, cupcakes are one of the reasons I don't like them is they are generally so sweet, like so over the top sweet. And secondly, I can almost I mean, part of it is probably because I don't like them, but if I want to just try a cupcake, like you're speaking about other desserts, like let's imagine a regular slice of cake or so like a regular cake or something like ice cream or something like pie, right? Like or cookies. Almost all of those things you can have half a cookie, you can have a skinny slice of cake, you can have just one scoop of ice cream or half a scoop of ice cream, a kitty cone, whatever, right? With
hmm,
the cupcake, it's like this predetermined
hmm,
fixture
modular, right.
where it's like you don't have a choice in the matter. So me
Right.
and you, even if we have varying obviously vastly different views on our desire to eat this cupcake, but let's say
Hmm,
we both wanted to try it or I wanted to just take one bite, you wanted
hmm.
to have the whole damn thing. um it would never be perfect for either of us. You would have wished there were more cupcake and I would have wished there were less. And there's no way to like eat it without wasting it. So if I want, like yesterday, I remember at the birthday thing I went to, I wanted to try, like, somebody brought the cupcakes and I wanted to try, but I didn't want the whole thing.
How
But
big were
because
they?
they're so messy, huh?
Were they a mini cupcake or a big one?
It was about the same this size. It was about like
That's a mini cupcake that you have right now. Yeah.
no, no, there were smaller
That's
ones.
small.
The mini cupcakes I think of are like tiny. This was
Okay.
like a this is like a regular size cupcake, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Or whatever. I'm not a cupcake expert, clearly. Um, but hating cupcake expert, maybe. No, I'm kidding. I don't hate them. I just dislike them. But like, it was one of those things where it's like I was like again, for someone with a sweet tooth, it surprises me when I'm oversaturated. But like that's fine. Different. You can argue like you could make it with less sugar, blah blah blah. But they're always going to be, unless they're literally those teeny tiny ones, which are very rare. Like I don't want the whole thing. So it's like if I have
Hmm,
one bite, it's now wasted. It's not the kind of thing you can easily like cut in half and share with
hmm.
someone, or it just feels very wasteful. And yeah, not a fan.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll give you that. Like it's once it's
I'm
modularized, it's
so
harder
impressed that you're
to.
conceding. I know this is close to your heart. That means a lot that you're
No, no, no. I'm not
taking my
conceding that
arguments
cupcakes are
into
not
account.
overrated. I'll never concede that. I love
Okay.
them. But the point that you made of like, yeah, I definitely prefer smaller cupcakes over bigger ones because they're more
Mm,
modular.
yeah,
I mean, they're all modular, but they're more, you know, there's less reason to cut them up even further.
yeah.
So totally, like, I'll give you that. It's harder to. Is it easier to make half of, oh, there's too much ice cream in this cup
Mhm.
in this bowl. Give me half of that. Yeah, it's easier to do that with an ice cream cup than it is with a
Mhm.
cupcake. Of course, I'll give you that. It's harder to
And
remodularize something like that, where it's much easier to do that with maybe other desserts, even a cookie, like
yeah,
pie or whatever. Pie is a little bit harder, but still easier than cupcakes. Yeah, I'll give you
cool.
that. But yeah, I mean, I'll give you that. Like, I between among all the cupcakes, I'd probably prefer the smaller the better.
Smaller.
Kind of.
So, to hit you with another cheesy cupcake rebuttal, they're also not like dessert. One of the joys of dessert is like being able to share, I think. And like
Yeah.
cupcakes aren't really shareable. Whereas like most other desserts, you can pass it to someone, you can share it. It's kind of cute. It's like a moment.
That's okay. That's a stupid. That's bullshit. I don't buy that argument at all.
I'm telling
I
you.
don't know what you mean by share. Of course, they're shareable. Like they're shareable as in you take one cupcake, I take one cupcake. That
Yeah,
I
no,
mean, they're
that's not
small.
shareable. There's
Okay,
nothing
but
cute about
different
that moment.
desserts have their own versions of sharing. Come on,
Dude,
that's a
even
ridiculous
Rasmalai, Gulab
argument.
Jamun, all of them, you can easily cut it in half and share. Cupcake? Nope, can't cut
Yeah,
that thing
okay,
in half.
fine, but like, come on, this is a very, very strict
Just
standard of
accept that
sharing.
you're losing this cupcake war, okay? That's all you gotta do.
No, 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 no. But again, I'm not. like it's not about losing. I think your take is a loser take either way. Like because you don't like the you already said your main argument is you just don't like them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I have better taste than to like cupcakes.
nonsense.
And
You
I'm
don't
giving
like
so many
something with
ancillary
icing on
reasons
it.
as well.
You admitted that you don't even like cake, which is like even
I
I didn't even hit you on that because like
I
I
like
know
good cake.
how.
Cake, I think it's much harder for and that's the other thing, it's much harder for cupcakes and cakes to impress me. There have been times so I will admit, I had a cupcake last night. One of my friends brought it and was like, "Oh, it's really, really good," and so I tried it, and I have to admit, I was like I heard myself saying and I literally thought of you, I was like, "Oh my god, I think we're chatting today, and, like, this is kind of funny." I was like, "This" I think I even said, "This is actually good," 'cause I was surprised.
It was a regular cake,
And
not a cupcake.
it was a very, like it was say that again?
It was a regular cake, not a cupcake.
No, no, it was a cupcake.
Oh, it was a
It
cupcake.
was a
Okay,
mini
yeah.
cupcake. It was from a
It
place called Nothing Bundt Cakes.
I
Yeah.
love them. I
Yeah,
love bun cakes. I love nothing bun cakes. I
yeah.
love cupcakes from nothing bun cakes. They're
They
great.
it was actually good, like, they
Great
had,
cake.
like, little chocolate chips in the base,
Please
and so there
sponsor
was a
our
little bit
podcast,
of
please. Yeah.
Huh?
Uh-huh. Please sponsor our podcast, Nothing Bun Cakes. Yeah.
Yes, please, 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 look at us giving you free
Because
advertising.
one of us is clearly on board with you. Yes.
And hey, even the other one is conceding to just your brand. I mean,
Mm.
there could not be a bigger endorsement. Okay, anyway. So, like, yeah, I liked that it wasn't most cupcakes I find kind of dry and, like, this was good. It had some dynamic contrast um, and even the icing was, like, kind of nice and not overly sweet and overdone. So it was decent, but still, if given the choice, that would not be my number 1 go-to.
Hmm.
Just
Cool.
would so,
Yeah.
I'm
So
glad we had this
we have
conversation.
to
I
leave
think
it
this has
there
been
because I don't think I'm gonna end up having the last word with you. You're just gonna keep coming back with the same recycle takes
I mean,
because
they're
we
not
got you the first
recycled,
time.
they're all different, you just don't like them,
Mm.
but
Well, I didn't even hit you on all the things that you said. Well,
go for
the
it. Let's
specific
hear it.
thing being
Come on.
about cake, but no, there's diminishing returns at this point. I think the audience can tell, our core values from
Yeah.
this and where we're coming from, right? And clearly, the fact that you're an anti-cake bigot is gonna turn them off, and they're
Hey,
gonna be on my side.
cheesecake. There's cheesecake, mousse cake, ice cream cake all
Yeah,
day long.
got it. Anyway, so I'd love to forget this conversation ever happened. Uh,
You invited it,
um,
don't blame me.
I just love I love cake so much. I'll never leave you, my beloved. Okay, having said that and having defended my side, maybe we can move on to more serious things.
Sure.
I mean, I thought this was a very serious thing, and I got very worked up, as I think you did.
I think we did.
But what else is on your mind? I have a few topics here. Do you want to get into
Mm.
anyone in particular? Let's see, I have
Um, I can tell you, like,
friendships,
what
cities, suits, saying no as a service, Ranatu.
hmm. You
Sorry, you were
know,
gonna say you can tell me what? You were gonna say something.
no, I was gonna say, like, you mentioned cities, and I think one of the things I have been thinking about a
Ah.
little bit is,
Mm.
just the concept of, like, how commitment to I mean, this applies more broadly than just to a city, but, like, how commitment enables community.
Mm.
And I've been thinking about, for several years now, like, I've sort of felt like I've been wanting to leave, the area. I've been wanting to go somewhere else. I have
Are you open to sharing where you live?
I live in Washington, DC,
Mm.
or at least very
Suburbs, yeah.
close to it. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
very close to it. And so, yeah, like I've been like, I've been in DC for like most of my life. I'm bored. I want to go somewhere else. And I think honestly, there are very valid reasons for that. Like there are still certain things about DC that I don't love, and I yeah, I think I've just been going back and forth a lot. And I think that can kind of prevent you from getting to like I think the nice thing about once you commit is that you're open to exploration, right? You're
Mm.
open to exploration. You're open to actually like looking for the goodness in the place because now you are here and now you know you are going to stay here. And anyway, so yeah, like I have since decided, like earlier this year, I decided that at least for a year, I was going to stay in the area, barring any extenuating circumstances. Um, and what's been really nice about it is like, I think that's part of why now that I'm like, okay, I don't feel like I'm constantly having to worry about, okay, where am I going to go next? What am I doing next? Right. At least for now, I'm like, I have some time and it's given me the freedom almost to like look into events that are happening, look into communities that exist around here, and see, like, even when I meet people around the area, I'm now a little less tentative, because I'm like, I actually do intend on being here, even if it's for just a year. I don't know yet how long it'll be, but the chances of me actually seeing this person again are higher, which is nice, right? And so I think that's been really lovely. And I know, Vivek, I've already told you about this, and a few folks know about this, but like, I have been really fortunate in some ways in terms of like where I've decided to live, specifically in the area. I've had like, I've kind of built a community of neighbors that like we not I've built, that's totally incorrect, as in I have been fortunate enough to like just be part of like a group. And so I I mean, like, friends I've told her like, that's
Mm.
so rare, that's so strange, that's not common to like be friends with like actual friends with your neighbors, as in like you might want to go to dinner with them or something like that. And it doesn't happen all the time, but I mean, as someone who lives alone, like, one thing I will admit, it gives me solace knowing like if something were to happen, like there would be people that would notice, that would care, right? And there's also this sense of just, it's just really nice to feel in community. It's really nice to like walk around, and sometimes when you look like a gremlin and you don't want to be seen, you're like, oh God, why am I'm going to run into a bunch of people, right? But otherwise, it's kind of nice to have that mix of like personal space and yet scaffolding around that, in the sense of people, like places that you can revisit, because now it's no longer like a, oh, this is only mine for a month. It's like, oh, this can be mine for as long as I want it to be mine, you know? I don't know if that made sense, but that's what's been
Mm.
on my mind.
That's beautiful. I'm happy for you. That's yeah, it's very enviable to have a community of neighbors like that. Uh,
First time for me. Yeah. It's nice.
Yeah, it's so funny how many people don't know their neighbors. I know one of my neighbors, and I know the manager of the building. That's it.
Yeah.
And it's yeah, it's a very precious thing. It's beautiful. I'm glad you found that. And hmm, on the cities thing, it's really cool to commit to an area and commit to a community, and excited to see what that where that takes you.
Yeah. And what's interesting is like, flaws and all, like, even if you recognize like this area, like where I live right now, I'm like, okay, I was just talking to someone about this last night. Like, the restaurants, like the food is just not good. That's just a fact. And that's something that I generally care about. So it's a little disappointing, but there's enough other things that are good that you kind
Mm.
of, it's like with people, right? Like, my mom has this expression that I like adore, that she should coin or something, but she talks about like the cost of admission for being someone's friend, and how like, you have to be, are you okay with that cost of admission? Like, everyone's gonna frustrate you, bother you, annoy you in different ways, and you're gonna do that to them, but you have to be willing to pay each other's cost of admission, and
Right.
that's what will keep the friendship going. If one thing is just too much for you, then it's not gonna last, right? And so I think that's to some extent, it's like you're deciding to accept, that's what commitment is, right? You're deciding to like accept the place's flaws with what it has to offer, and then once you've made that decision, you're like, I'm going to go find out what it has to offer now that I've made that decision.
Hmm. I
How
love
do
that.
you, yeah, I'm curious if you have any sort of like, if you've had those thoughts at all before, or if you feel any particular way about your city. um
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that commitment opens up avenues for sure. With my city, it's so interesting how a city, like, where were you going with that cost of admission thing? Like, you were saying, like, cities also have a
oh,
cost of admission, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
exactly, I didn't connect
places you
dots
live
with
have a
that.
cost of it. Like, all places have ups and downs, and basically, like, if you're willing to take the downs and take the costs, interesting. Yeah, I think so. I live in LA, and yeah, with I also have this playing around with this idea of every city has a soul.
Mm.
Every city a has a
Like its own life
story.
force almost.
Yeah, there's a life force. There's a soul, as in, like, it's a living, breathing thing, even if it's not breathing the way that we are breathing, right?
Mm.
It's a Yeah. Cities are alive. They have character. They have um, personality. There's a lot of um, what makes a city, that I'm very fascinated by, and we should probably,
Mm,
I could talk about that for hours. Like one
mm,
thing is like with LA, I always thought um, uh, I wouldn't like it here. I
mm,
always thought I was more of a New York or San Francisco guy,
mm,
and but it so happened that the circumstances of my life, um, brought me to LA. It had more to do with like looking for a job after the recession and everything, and I had family here. And the thing I discovered after moving to LA proper is that underneath the image of LA that I had, which is LA is like, very superficial, very
mm.
outwardly facing, very actory, very model, actor, stage, a lot about
Like
artifice
veneer.
primarily.
Yeah. Mhm.
And what I found is like, yeah, that's there. Nobody's going to say it's not there. But underneath that, the underbelly of like this monstrosity of like uh, network underneath that of like so many people are here that have made the decision to be most people are here because
Mm,
they've made the decision at some point in their lives to be creative with their lives,
mhm.
right? Talk about commitment. They've committed to a dream or something,
Yeah.
you know and it doesn't have to be some kind of like, oh, I'm an actor, or I'm gonna direct or something. But somehow show business is like breathing under every bit of the city. Even if you're like a
Yeah.
car salesman, you're somehow, somebody who's like in the business. There's a adjacency to fame, the adjacency to the business of attention, which is what I call show
Mm,
business, that just permeates the entire city, the soul
yeah.
of the city. And the part that fascinates me is like that creative underbelly of the city, right?
Mhm.
You're a stone's throw away from somebody writing a screenplay, writing a script, writing, all kinds of things, like practicing a monologue,
Mm,
editing something. They're all in the various stages of a creative birthing
mhm.
process. Somebody's birthing something somewhere all the time.
Yeah.
Everybody's in gestation. Oh wow, I like this thing that I just said. It's been a month.
Don't
Like
you love
it's
when sometimes you're like, "That was profound. Wow."
I
Yeah.
mean, phrasing, like everybody is in constant, already always gestating. You
Mm,
know, that's always happening. There's a
yeah.
creative gestation process that is always happening around you, and
Mhm.
everything's in a different stage all the time. But it's
Right.
that wheel is always turning. It's like
Mm,
very interesting. And I'm not in the business, right? And I like being around that energy.
mhm.
I have
It's
a
almost
little
like
bit of
secondhand.
exposure to improv and stuff, but otherwise, it's just like it's just around me,
Yeah.
and I love that. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's really cool. I like the way you put it as well, because it's if even if, like you said, if even if for you it's improv and maybe you're not in show business, like via osmosis, so much, like, right, like we are our surroundings in many, many ways. And so just being, I think in
Mm.
those ways, cities do influence who you are, because and I think the where it gets a little tricky is, often people will talk about how like living in a city is so different from like visiting a city. Like if you visit New York City, I can admit that the first probably 2, 3 times I visited, like, went with family, went to show someone who's visiting from abroad, and, like, we always went to Times Square. So my image as a child of New York City was Times Square, which, like, is that cool sometimes? Like, yeah, the M&M's thing was kinda cool. Like, there's some things that are cool, the ads are interesting, but that's not actually the day-to-day life of most people in New York City. That's the tourist, right? And that doesn't mean there's not truth to that, but it's like you're living a different reality. And so in some ways, like, we don't really, the people who are in the city are the ones that get the full force of that osmosis, of that like ambient energy, right? Or whatever it is that permeates, the in this case, if it's creative energy and people coming up with ideas that might change lives, right? Literally. um that's a really, really
Mm.
cool, and I think it symbolizes hope in some ways. Like, I had this guy in my improv class, like, before the pandemic, who was in his, like, early 20s, and I think this was his first or second improv class, the one that I was in, and he was by far the best improviser in our entire class, and there was no question about that, um, and by the end of the class, he had made a decision to leave everything here behind and to move to LA. And there was just, I mean, he knew that he could, in the sense that he's young and had his whole life ahead of him, but also like, there was this creative spirit that he wanted to act on while it was fresh. And I'm so glad that, I don't know, I haven't kept up with him. I don't know what happened, but even just going there, I'm sure just being in the presence of other folks who had their own dreams, like it can be kind of contagious to listen to other people's dreams sometimes. So
Definitely, yeah. And that's one lovely thing about improv is that it gives you exposure to that whiff of hope in
mm,
whether people are being actors or not. There's that the whole it's the most easy adjacency to stage, the most easy adjacency to show business without actually being in it, which is
yeah.
why I recommend it to a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Having said all that, one thing, excuse me, one thing that's certainly been bubbling up for me in the last, I don't know, I would say a year, 6 months, is attraction to the East Coast or San Francisco, like either
Hmm.
New York or San Francisco. Like density. The one thing about LA that LA
Mm,
doesn't have is like it's extremely sprawling. It's like no
yeah,
others. Calling it a city is it's not really fair.
yeah.
It's
It's a
many,
connected
many, many,
network
many,
of,
many different
yeah.
cities. It's like kind of weird. It's an extremely strange place. It's a very, very strange place. Uh, but New York and San Francisco are much more traditional cities,
Mm,
and like New York's, especially like this idea of like going to New York and being in a place with high density.
mm,
Hmm, that's definitely sitting with me. So I've been thinking about also just visiting. So I took my cousin on a road trip
mhm.
across the East Coast. Actually came to DC as well, which I didn't even. I somehow like I we had
Thanks
this
for saying hi.
conversation. I know. We had
Oh,
this
this was a
conversation.
while
Remember?
ago. Yeah,
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 I
yeah,
told you like
okay.
this was like not last summer, but the summer before that. I told you like somehow.
Yeah,
Actually, no, I did not go to DC on that trip, but I was in DC this summer,
mm.
and we had this conversation. I totally forgot about.
Yeah, I think
I
I did
thought
too.
somehow you were somewhere else. Like
Yeah,
somehow it didn't click, and yeah. Anyway, so I was going to say when I was in the East Coast in general, there's this verdant greenery of the
mhm,
land, which is not the case
yeah,
in LA because LA is a
mhm.
desert,
Have
desert.
desserts
Uh,
on the mind, happens.
LA is a desert. LA is a desert, and California is a desert, and in New York, even if it's New York State, everything it's just green. The ground is there's
Mm,
that, and then the city itself. There's something. I don't know. Somebody. I think there's a friend of mine. She's on Twitter. We both know her, but she moved to New York, and she was like, sometimes I miss LA from LA, and
mm,
she was like, but she moved to New York for a reason.
mm.
Um, there's something about New York that seems to call me either New York or even San Francisco, but New York
I could I
especially.
could see you liking New York, actually. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't, like, I'm still getting to know you, but I could see that. Yeah.
Hmm.
I almost
How?
see that more than San Francisco, but
Anything specific come to mind on that?
I think some of it is just, like, the creative scene and, the number of people that, like, I know you're into comedy, and I think that there's a very strong, just kind of, like, there's a lot of funny people and people who are interested in that kind of thing, and I feel like I guess I almost feel like New York has a little bit more of a sense of, like, being in the city. With San Francisco, some of the sprawl still exists. It's not as bad as LA, but I feel like that could quickly mirror your LA experience in a
Yes.
different way. So New York feels a little more distinct for what you are seeking to me.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have the same thought. Which is like
Plus
density.
East Coast. I mean, I'm now an advocate, kind of. Yeah.
I it was honestly I always thought West Coast was the best coast until I took my cousin on that road trip, and I was like,
Mm,
dude, I think I've kind of unfairly written off this, and in fact,
mm,
if anything, I have egg on my face because the East Coast is
yeah.
really there's some really cool things. Like there's public transport,
Yeah.
there's train. You can take a train from I don't know Boston to New York. I think
Mhm.
maybe I'm wrong, but
I
DC to
think,
New
yeah,
York
the
for sure.
Amtrak, yeah, yeah, you can.
Yeah, DC to New York, you can do it,
Mhm.
and within New York, obviously, there's a subway. There's
Yeah.
you can go to Philly, you can go to Boston.
Mhm. Yeah.
There's something about I mean, those are real cities, right? There's
Mhm.
like yeah, I think that there's something very fascinating about it. I don't know what I'm gonna do about that at all, but it's definitely in my heart and
Mm.
you know, it's
So
it's it's
it's
bubbling up in my
permeating.
psyche.
Yeah,
So we'll see.
yeah.
Yeah.
One other thing that came up for me that was, I thought, kind of so, like, recently-ish, I don't know if I mentioned this to you already, I might have, but I had, like, run into someone who moved here from San Diego, and San Diego is a place I still have my eye on, kind of. Like, I still am very fond of San Diego. I don't know, I just like the vibe, and I could see myself at some point, like, still wanting to go out there.
Mm.
But in any case, like, and one of my questions was like, "Wait, you came to DC from San Diego? Like, please explain this to me." And I think especially because I've been thinking about the opposite potential move, like, not seriously as of now. Again, I've committed to DC for now, but at some point I was thinking about that, and I might in the future. So, and he was just like, "Yeah, like." And I kind of joked and I said something like, "Oh, you just really wanted some cold, huh?" And he was like, "Yeah,
Kind of.
actually." You know? And then he went on to talk about how, I guess, he had lived in, like, Hawaii and Florida and, yeah, and most recently California, San Diego specifically. And so he was like, "Yeah, I've kind of lived in areas where, like, it's great, like the sunny skies and all that stuff. That's wonderful. But, like, eternal sun, at some point, it does get tiring and it gets a little boring. And, like, I wanted to see seasons." And I've heard that from people who I've met that have moved from, like, the West Coast. That's actually one of the most common things I hear. It's usually either
Mhm.
because of family, or some wanted something new, or got a job in DC, or I just wanted a change. I wanted seasons. And, like, one of the things that sticks out to me about the seasonal thing is that seasons do anchor you in time. They're a really good temporal, like, just like an anchor. Like, they help you. Sometimes you might remember a certain experience and you're like, "Oh yeah, I remember I was wearing my big coat that day and it was like the snow was falling, and then we went to this place because it was really cold." Like, you kind of have those moments feel different in your head because the weather was a little different. So the way you were dressed and acting and who you were with might be different in ways that, like, it's just not it's not that way. Like, two of my cousins got married in the last year. Both of them live in San Diego. And when we went for both weddings, like, that was something that was evident. It was almost like it felt like we were just here, but it was actually, one was in October, one was in June, you know?
And
But
it didn't
because
feel different because the seasons were the same.
the seasons were, it looked the same. And actually, a friend of my cousin's commented on it. He lives in Boston. He commented on the fact that, like, because I think I asked something about, like, when he was last here. He was like, I never remember when I was last here, because every time I come, it feels the same.
Mm.
And that comment felt really, like, interesting to me at the time. And the more I've, like, let that marinate, I really do think there's something to that anchoring that's important.
Mm. Yeah, that's a great point. When I first lived with my uncle and aunt, and he went to college in Buffalo, and he told me the same thing. It's nice to have seasons in the East Coast. I was like, because I was fresh off the Midwest flight, and I was like, oh, it's so nice to be in the winter and not think about whether I need to
Mm.
wear pants and like this whole space suit to go out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can wear shorts and go out if I want. That's pretty cool. But he was like, yeah, at some point, you want seasons too. I was like, really?
I
I
know.
don't I
I
don't think
didn't
I
believe
miss it
it.
that much, but I can see it. I totally see it now, and
Yeah.
I mean, there's something charming about wearing, wearing a hoodie and wearing. Honestly, I'm just a slut for trench coats. I just want one. I want an excuse. I know I can do it in
You need
LA,
to
but
move to New
it
York.
doesn't
It sounds
really
like that's what's calling to
like
you.
walking on a street with brownstones in Brooklyn or something like
Yeah.
that, wearing a trench coat in the fall with like
You're
all the
manifesting
different
right
kinds of
now.
leaves.
I'm hearing it.
Oh,
Yeah.
that sounds really good. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a vibe there, right? There's a
Yeah.
vibe that's like undefeated. That's really,
Mhm.
really cool vibe.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, yeah. So yeah, I definitely see it. So
Yeah.
New York's got that going for it.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
So I think, yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on how kind of like where you end up and how your desires evolve. But I
Yeah.
could
How
totally
how
see
does
this
this
working
bubble
out
up?
for you.
What was that?
I could totally see this happening. Like, you're moving to New York, and I mean, I feel like you would know people. It's the East Coast,
Yeah, I
so
do know a couple of like basically Twitter people.
yeah.
Apparently, New York is one of the biggest, aside from San Francisco. Maybe New York might be even bigger. Like a lot of
Mm.
teapot people are
Mm.
concentrated in New York.
I think
Yeah,
so. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So, quick time check. How are you doing on?
Yeah. So I think
You
I
have
have.
you have one of your millions of friends that are waiting for you.
So
Honestly, I just have to say a point of gratitude for you sharing all this because you said, okay, birthday yesterday. That's where the cupcake thing happened. Slam poetry happened. Improv class happened. You've mentioned like 4 events. Like there's another one that you mentioned with a friend with another friend that you went to. So every time you talk about these things, It's like, yeah, another friend. And then today you're meeting another friend. And it's great. I love it. So
Oh.
you're just like at some point you were saying something and I was just like, you're just showing off at this point. And
No, that's
I wish
not
I'd
the
said
goal.
that.
And some of those friends are the same
I didn't
friends,
want
right?
to.
Like they can overlap. Like I do
They
things with the same people
could. They
sometimes.
could. But you have a lot of friends. Anyway, good. Go ahead.
I like talking to people and I
Mm-hmm.
like warmth and all that stuff. But yeah, I have one question for you before we leave.
Mm.
So
Mm.
you started by asking about my bio, and I thought it'd be fun because I realized I don't actually know what yours says, and so I just went to your page,
Okay.
and I'll read it. And I have one question about it. Okay,
Mm.
so it says engineer,
Mm.
Carnatic music,
Mm.
improv, politics, meaning, Rusica, love warrior, novice skier, against shaming, always dancing with angst, he, him, his, DMs welcome, and Santa Monica, California, which TBD. Oh my God, I just
Doxed.
doxed you. I know. Um, anyway, so
Cut that out. We can cut that out. We'll bleep it.
I
No,
mean,
go
it's
ahead.
all over your Twitter profile. But
Sure.
anyway, so I'm curious. I think some of these are semi self-explanatory. So in the interest of time, I'm going to ask about what do you mean by always dancing with angst?
Mm.
It's a very interesting line. I don't think I've heard before.
Uh, it's funny. Part of it is I was looking for a creative outlet, whether it's a podcast, hello, or I was going to start a Substack, which I did, and my Substack is called Creative Angst,
Hmm.
um, and that
I'm
really
surprised
came
you
out in
got
a
that name, honestly, because that feels like it'd be a really popular one. Huh.
yeah. I didn't. Nobody had it, and nobody
Hmm.
had the podcast either.
Wow.
Um, so what I was going to say with like so I had this creative crisis maybe a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, and one of our mutual friends, and shout out to him, he's a wonderful soul, Jiva.
Mm,
He also often comes to II events, um, but he and I had this conversation, and I think that word came up for me a lot. Basically, my experience of the world is almost saturated. Like, if you ask me, what is your day to day experience of the world and of your creative ambitions or what do you want to do, it's not clear.
mm,
It's a bunch of swirling chaos and dread at not being able to make form out of it,
mm.
right? And birth it into the world. And I'll probably do a much longer solo podcast or episode on this at some point, but
Trying to kick me off already? Wow.
no, not on ours. Like I
I'm
wouldn't I
just
wouldn't do
kidding.
that to you. No, but I mean like there's this whole idea of the Sufi. I really want to interview my Sufi the Rumi poetry teacher,
Mm,
and I did, and the audio was kind of weird on that, so I probably have to re-record it. But there's this Sufi the Rumi the Persian poetry mystic theory of the numbers, which is one,
mm,
2, and 3 and 4. That's a much longer thing to get to, but um, that describes the process of creation, right? That's how
mm,
creativity is born into the world, right? And 4 is physicality, 3 is an idea, 2 is potential possibility,
mm,
and 1 is just undifferentiated consciousness, like undifferentiated potential. It's like
mm,
pure, uh, and everything you see in the world before it's physical was once unseen. It was once an idea.
mm,
It was once spirit. It was not material. it
mm,
it was an idea at some point. It was just in somebody's head. It was completely non-physical at some point, and it had to be birthed into the world. And what the Sufis call the veil, what Rumi calls the veil, the pardeh or the parda, what we would call in Hindi or
mhm,
Urdu, uh, between the world of the unseen and the seen is that lies between 3 and 4. That lies between all these worlds of there's consciousness, and then there's consciousness wants to create in the world, and so it becomes hider and seeker. That's where you have the world of polarity. You have hot
mhm,
and cold, you have soft and hard, and you have short and tall. You have all trillions and trillions and trillions of possibilities, and then ideas come from specific points on that spectrum. Like ideas are some combination of possibility, right? That's an
mm,
idea. Oh, there's many possibilities, but I have one idea. And then that gets born. That's 3. And then that idea somehow gets born into the world, right? And it becomes 4, it becomes physical. So for me, angst is what my it symbolizes what happens in 1, 2, and 3 before something actually gets. So if somebody says,
Mm,
Vivek, what do you have? Like my big dread, my big angst in the world is like I'm trying to create something. I know I have something to say. I know I have a message to give. And not even message. That sounds so cringe and trite.
but
But
you have a story,
I
like,
have a
you
voice,
have right.
and I want to use my something is dying to come through me,
Mhm.
right? But I don't know what it is. And if somebody
Yeah.
says, "Give me your elevator pitch," I don't have one.
I
If
have that
somebody
struggle
says,
too. Yeah.
"Give me what are you wanting to do?" I actually don't know. I know these are some of my interests. How do they all come together? I'm not sure. And so it's the dread and the angst of watching people and watching the creative world do things, right? Make things,
Mhm.
birth things into the world. And me, like dancing with angst all the time. And
Mm,
so for me, my thing is like I want to like creative angst has two there's two ways you can look at it, right? You want to
yeah.
be creative instead and what you have is a lot of angst. The other way to do it is like going from taking your angst and making it into creativity,
I was gonna say you
right?
could fuel it can literally metabolize into
Is that because ultimately that is what I want to do. Like that is
mm,
all the angst is about creativity. It wants to be created, right? It's one wants to be birthed into the world. So yeah, so I'm always dancing with angst means that yeah, I might be smiling and well adjusted and smiling, happy, but I'm
mhm.
always like deeply wrestling with this question of like, mm, something wants to come through me, and
What is
I'm
that inner voice?
somehow neglecting it
Yeah.
or not doing enough or don't know what it looks like. And
Mhm.
like if I spent all my life doing that, it would still not be enough, almost like that.
Hmm.
Right.
I
And so that's the angst.
yeah, I
And I'm
like that
always
it's
dancing.
yeah, I mean, that very much resonates with me, and I think you described it well, and I sometimes yeah, some people have very clear and succinct and kind of well-defined elevator pitches and messages and that they want to put in the world, and I sometimes I'm like, I have a lot of interests and there's a lot of messages I wanna put into the world, and I know that we contain multitudes, and sometimes it can feel like you have to rein it in to get that message out sometimes, and so, like, how do you do that? But one thing I really like about that phrase, before we wrap here, is just I love that it's dancing with angst, right? Not fighting angst, not living with angst. It's there's a certain picture that some for at least me it conjures up when you're dancing with angst. It's like you know it's there, but you're kind of making a game of it. You're making art of that angst in a weird way because I would consider dance an art form, you know. So that's kind of yeah, that's really cool. That's not something I had really known about you.
Thank you so much for asking. I
Yeah,
feel like, I feel so
like lighter.
gracious. I mean, it's like such a gracious thing for you to pick that out of my bio. What I picked out of your bio was dessert first. I know that was the end of both our bios, but but no, really, I feel like we ended on a really, really good note. Yeah, thank you for asking about that. I haven't really talked too much about it, but partly the reason it's really cool that you asked that is this whatever we're doing here is a form of channeling angst and
Mhm.
a form of it's a creative outlet. It's one way to dance with the angst, right?
Yeah.
There's a billion ways, and this is one of the ways that I'm very glad that you're my dance partner in this angsty dance.
Yeah, this has been so much fun, and
Yeah,
I'm glad that yeah, this is one avenue, and it's like, yeah, you can try a bunch of different steps, and even it's funny because even within dancing, there's so many different
right.
ways that it can go, and so yeah,
Awesome.
I'm loving that. So,
Are
all right,
you are you happy with our solo like our duo episode?
you know, minus some of your cancelable takes, I think it was pretty fun.
It was
But yeah.
awesome. I love this. This is great.
Yeah,
So
this has
yeah,
been fun.
thank you so much
Vivek, by
for
the way, didn't wanna do this. I had to convince him that it would be
I,
fine. He was, like,
uh,
not willing to talk to
okay.
just me
We'll,
apparently.
we'll we'll handle that
Not
next
cool.
time.
Yeah, we'll come
Yes.
back to this anyway.
Ouch. Oof. Anyway,
All right,
but great.
let's everyone go dance with some angst. We'll catch
Yeah,
you next
let's do
time.
that. Do that, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and
Thank
we
you.
will see you next time. And wish everyone wish Vidhika a safe and fulfilling trip to India.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you.
Yes. Okay, cool. All right.
All right,
Thanks for listening, guys. See you
catch you
next time.
later.
Bye.
Bye.